Who has heard of this alphabet soup? Anybody familiar with these acronyms? BPC. What did I do? Oh, yeah, BPC. Okay. That's a typo.
Got it.
Sorry for my online community. It's correct, the rest of it. I type BPH all the time, all day, every day. So when I get to the B and I get to the P and then it's like H. Anyways, BPC. So nobody's heard of BPC-157? It's not been on anybody's feeds. We don't have any gym girlies here. Yes, we have, yes. Okay, cool. Any skin girlies? We haven't heard of the GK, yeah? No? Okay, that's all right. We're gonna learn tonight. It's probably gonna be on your feeds now. All right. So BPC-157 and GHK-Cu, these are like two of the most sought after peptides in the peptide market right now, outside of the GLP world. Okay, so GLPs are also peptides, but these two are really, really having a moment. Actually, they've been having a moment for various reasons. We'll get into that shortly. The objectives for today, we want you to understand what peptides are and their history, understand their strengths and weaknesses behind the evidence for wow, there it is again. Maybe it's an autocorrect. BPC-157 and GHK-Cu, and then learn the risks, limitations, and regulatory concerns of the peptide industry, and increase the ability to evaluate products and claims so that when you guys hear about additional peptides that are sure to come out, you guys are able to look through the evidence yourself and kind of know what to look for. So why is everybody talking about these guys? First and foremost, social media. I do not think that this could have started hitting people's algorithms without social media. Not just that there's an algorithm to like feed you stuff that you want, but social media is really around and highlights the ability to compare one another, optimization, beauty optimization, health optimization, whatever the thing that's your thing, it's gonna try to teach you how to do that better and get a leg up on one another. And so social media is really, I think, a very key part of peptides hitting the mainstream. The longevity movement is a very important aspect of this. This is a field of medicine that is really dedicated towards not just extension of life, but the anti-aging movement. So it's not just that we want to be 100, it's that we want to be 100 and feel 65, right? And so it's about really kind of understanding the aging process and the mechanisms and chemicals that allow you to not age, potentially. And then looks maxing culture absolutely is about, can you just polish up what you already have? And then we have a ton, like we love a before and after, right? Like I'm always going for befores and afters on like people that I think are good looking. I'm like, I want to know what you used to look like. But these kinds of compounds that are available for sale, this is like prime time for somebody to say this, look at my skin before, look at my skin after, or whatever the case may be. So what is a peptide? A peptide is a collection, a chain of amino acids in a single structure. It is a smaller length of chains, somewhere between 2 and 50 amino acids that have come together. We're taking you guys back to chemistry. Those amino acids, if there are more than 50 of them, then we consider this larger. We call it a polypeptide, or it might be branched or not. And then when it assembles into a 3D structure, that is really a protein. So a peptide is like a piece of it's like a building block. Conditional amino acids are also made inside our body, but they don't always last. They start to deplete as we age, and if we're they also are not always in large supply. So these amino acids either need to be supplemented by our foods or by other supplement medications or supplements, actually. And then these essential amino acids are not available in our body whatsoever, and they must come from food sources. So, and you can see there's quite a large list of them. And these are, they predate us, the pharmaceutical industry. These are things that we naturally need, our body requires to do the building blocks of its natural process, which is why, food is more than just sources. So are peptides hormones? Yes, kinda, but also they don't have to be. So these peptides right here, insulin, glucagon, growth hormone, these are all a list of hormones that also happen to be peptides. On this side over here, on the right side, you're gonna see a list of hormones that are not peptide hormones. These are hormones that are made in our body, but they're considered steroid hormones. Now, what are the differences between these? The peptide hormones are not able to enter our blood cells. Those peptides will kind of dock on the outside of our blood cells, and then usually there's a signal pathway that happens after that. On the other hand, these other hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, these can freely enter our cells, and then they have specific receptors, and they are, I would consider, actually very, very powerful hormones. And you can tell, right? These are thyroid, dopamine, norepinephrine. These things need to have quick sequences, right? But for example, something like insulin, it has additional downstream effects that take place. Now, the history of peptides, this is not a new thing. So even though this industry feels very new, the history of peptides is very, very old. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think when we think about the supplement industry, it feels very brand new. It feels like something, I don't know, can I trust it? Is this something that's legit? And the fact is, these have been studied since the early 1900s. The first father of peptides is Emil Fischer. He won the Nobel Prize in 1902. He is a German scientist who theorized that proteins might have building blocks underneath them. So he's the first guy who thought, hey, there are amino acids that might create these stepping stones to peptides, and then peptides become proteins. He also developed the mechanism of the method for putting together, for building a peptide. So not just identifying them in nature, but being able to create one in the lab. So that methodology came from Dr. Fischer. And then the first scientist that was able to actually make it happen was Vincent Vinot. He was a French-American scientist, and he also won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1955 for assembling the first peptide. These peptides that are naturally found inside of our body, they are responsible for signaling, healing. They regulate other hormones. So what you'll see as a trend is many of the peptides signal other hormones to come up or come down, right? So they're more of a regulator. They will control our level of inflammation, and they can influence cell growth and coordinate our immune responses. So these are some of the key roles of peptides, and these are not the ones that we're taking, right, supplementally. The FDA has several medications that are approved as peptides. We just don't talk about them like peptides. Like in the peptide market, you're not gonna hear people talking about insulin. But insulin is a peptide, and it's FDA-approved medication. Also, the GLP-1 agonists, semaglutide, tirzepatide, Wegovy, Ozempic, those are also FDA-approved peptides. Calcitonin is another one. This is used when parathyroid hormone is moving too high, and so you have to work through your calcium levels and bring calcium levels down. That's calcitonin. So peptides are leveraged by our bodies to optimize our health. So there are two big buckets for peptides. Those that have a known receptor and those where we don't really understand what's happening. We don't have a specific receptor. We can sometimes observe their actions in the body. We know, okay, when you give somebody this peptide, we see calcium levels start to change. Oh, we see blood vessels start to move. We see inflammation start to show up. But we don't necessarily identify a specific receptor. And that is, again, this like signaling modulation. So again, these are less potent activities, but they have downstream effects. What I notice about these peptides that do not have a receptor, they tend to have multiple actions that take place. One of the things that I want to identify really quickly is the GLPs. One of the things that people were talking about in the early days of semaglutide and tirzepatide was that there are receptors for GLP-1 all over the body. Do you guys remember hearing that? It was like, oh, it's not just hitting your pancreas. We have it in all of our cells. We have GLP-1 receptors everywhere, and so we don't know what the effect is going to be on our bone or on our muscle or on our brains or what have you. So. Receptors are. So it helps us understand where something's going to be working. If we don't have a known receptor, it's a little bit harder for us to find out like what are the downstream effects, but right? They want to get a little bit stronger. They want to heal faster. They want to outperform other people. And so, you know, there's a long history of the bodybuilding community using things like anabolic steroids of one kind or another to try to maximize their gains, right? And so when there were other compounds aside from anabolic peptides, and this is specifically talking about BPC, because BPC-157 it really got its hooks in the market because of people's interest in its role for healing and recovery and ability to take care of inflammation. And so these are issues that like high-level athletes are very much interested in. So these bodybuilders who are also very high-level athletes who are incurring a lot of injuries were very interested in BPC because of that. Now, once a few people started getting interested in it, it definitely started to circulate within the brosphere. So we're talking about, I mean, they became very, very popular through podcasts, of course. Reddit is absolutely busting at the seams with content about peptides, and influencers that are also dabbling in this. And then, of course, the availability of compounding pharmacies. So these are pharmacies that are completely legitimate, but they are able to make medications that are not necessarily coming direct from a pharmaceutical company like Eli Lilly or Merck or one of these other companies, right? So compounding pharmacies have been around for a long time, but I think most people weren't even really aware of them until when they're filling a shortage. So if there's a shortage of a specific medication like Ozempic, which we all lived through, then compounding pharmacies have the legal ability to make that compound in order to fill the need. They can also step or making a mix. So for example, the time of medications in one cream, and that is something that is not available at a Walgreens or a CVS. I have to have that compounded. So compounding pharmacies are legit, and they are regulated by either the state or federally. 7 pounds and just so stubborn, right? So I think when people started reaching for GLPs outside of the diabetic world, and we started noticing, hey, like you can start losing weight on this regardless of your diabetic status, people were all looking for Ozempic. And suddenly the idea of injecting yourself was like not that bad, right? Before, the only people that were injecting themselves are like diabetics and heroin people, right? But now suddenly everybody's comfortable injecting themselves, which is fine. I mean, there's really nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But the other important watershed moment was really the post-COVID anti-medicine movement that kind of started to take place. And so it was kind of rebuking traditional medicine, allopathic medicine, or Western medicine, and really like the boom of, I want to treat myself, I want to take my health into my own hands, I want to do supplements, I want to do Ayurvedic medicine, I want to do whatever kinds of augmented healthcare, that's not outside of the regular realm of Western medicine. So I think that combination, plus social media and like the advent of direct marketing, made a huge difference. The other important thing is we started to see organizations like MIDI, Him and Hers. How many of you guys saw these commercials over the years? So these are people who are saying, hey, like, is your doctor not listening to you? Talk to us. We'll give you your testosterone. Just, let us know how you're feeling. So now the issue with this is that organizations like this do not do the responsible follow-up stuff, especially, I'm just gonna get on my high horse really quickly about like exogenous testosterone. For a very long time, unless you have like men in your life that are like very, very transparent, and they probably are not, so many men have been going to testosterone clinics for the last 10 years. Like you'll see them in a corner, like a what's it called, strip mall. You'll see a little testosterone clinic. It's crazy. It is like the black market for dudes. And that was some of the beginning of this direct to consumer business. The other place that we saw that was with medicalized marijuana. Same idea. It takes, like, the bar is down here for people to get a prescription. The bar is down here. It's all somebody has to say is like, man, I really don't feel like myself anymore. And then suddenly they're like, yeah, pellets. And so people are getting testosterone without any responsible follow-up to that. And so this direct-to-consumer market really has started to blow up. And it has everything to do with hormones. Like, do you feel like your hormones are off? Are you perimenopausal? Do you feel like you've gained a lot of weight? So this field of like direct to consumer marketing is also very, very key for how to sell the stuff and the product, right? Because most people are not necessarily like looking to the gray market to try to get these medications. They're going to places like this. So we are going to dive into the evidence and the literature related to those two compounds. To prepare for that, I want you guys to just quickly take a quick review of the quality of scientific evidence, okay? At the top of the pyramid, this is the most potent data. That's why it's at the top of the pyramid, but it occupies the smallest amount of literature that's out there. These are meta-analyses. That's when there are multiple research projects that and they've already been published, and then somebody synthesizes them all together. They're comparing apples to apples. They're getting everybody's data together. Then you've got systematic reviews, which are literature reviews that are really rigorous. And then one thing that you hear often, this dark red, randomized controlled trials. These are so important because what they're doing is they're evaluating a medication against the placebo effect. And the placebo effect is very strong, up to 40%, okay? So without a randomized controlled trial, you struggle to prove that it's not a placebo effect. Then you've got cohort studies and case control studies. This is like, oh, we've been watching this one guy for 3 years, and this is the story of that one guy. And then at the bottom, you have expert opinion. So, and the expert opinion is like when I tell you that in my experience, this is what I notice, okay? So, right, because I could be biased, and so could all the doctors that are getting kickbacks from whatever, pharma that they're getting. So expert opinion, it has its place, especially early on, before formal research can be done. A lot of times we have to start here before we can move all the way up. But eventually you want to see like a particular medication get evaluated through the research, right? So BPC-157, it is a piece of a larger protein called BPC. I know that sounds a little confusing, but the BPC is the big compound called body protecting compound. This was discovered in human gastric proteins, and it was discovered by Dr. Sikric out of Croatia. And the central question, why did this come about? He was really questioning the reason why do our stomachs survive their acid, right? We have such deep, deep, deep acid in our stomach, and yet the lining of our stomach stays intact and it doesn't get destroyed. Meanwhile, we eat food, we eat meats, and they get broken down. So what is it that's going on in our system that protects the stomach? And which is a very valid question. And so they started evaluating some of the gastric juices that are in that organ, and that is how they found body protecting compound, which is a very large protein. Now BPC-157 is a small segment off of that protein. Now the research on BPC-157 all comes from animal studies, okay? If you listened, and ironically, there was a Huberman podcast this week that dropped about BPC, about peptides in general. We planned this well before the Huberman podcast. However, you will hear people talk about how BPC-157 has some human studies. I read them. I read a lot of the research on BPC-157. I have to say, all but two, potentially one. I actually don't even think that it's truly two. I think it's actually just one study that got published twice. They're all in animal studies. They're all in mice and rats, okay? So what does the BBC provide? It provides observation in the mice, tendon healing. They would actually cut ligaments, and they're reporting that those ligaments were getting healed in the mice. Muscle repair, gastric ulcers, so they conducted a lot of studies where they were stressing out animals and giving them caustic materials that would cause ulcerations in their stomach, and they noticed that if they pre-treated them with 157, that they would not get the stomach ulcers. And it had also been evaluated, the one study in human beings was related to inflammatory bowel disease, okay, like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. No, here we go. Okay, how does it work? As I mentioned, BPC-157 has no identified peptide receptor, so there's actually a lot of discrepancy in the field about how it works. There's no agreed upon mechanism of action. What they have noticed, this is considered observational studies, they noticed that there is some increased chemical called VEGF. If you are not in the human sciences, this probably doesn't make any sense to you, but VEGF helps signal the growth of capillaries. It helps grow blood flow, okay? And of course, that kind of makes some intuitive sense when it comes to healing, because blood flow is necessary to supply healing cells and our healing chemical factors. And so with more blood flow, you expect to heal better. So they actually do see not only do they see the precursor, which is the VEGF, they also see the actual growth of blood vessels. They also see increased recruitment of growth factor pathways, and growth factor is one of our hormones that happens inside of our body. Growth factor is necessary, of course, for growing as a small child, but also our growth factor is present in adulthood, and it starts to wane as we age. But growth factor is something that a lot of people who are interested in the anti-aging movement are after. And then we also see inflammatory signaling. Now, we did talk about it being anti-inflammatory. But inflammatory signaling is important because it tells your body where to repair. So to a certain degree, we need some type of inflammation in order for us to have repair. And then fibroblast activities, these are other types of cell that are involved in cell growth and angiogenesis, okay? Throughout the documents, the publications that are out of SICRIC's lab, there's this very, very overwhelming promise of safety. They indicate that you can take massive amounts of this medication with no toxicity signs at all, and that they think that it makes sense because it's rapidly cleared out of the body. Now, I want to pause there because there's something counterintuitive there, okay? If something does not have a toxicity level, it is considered by most pharmacokinetic and pharmacists and physicians that its potency is also in question. If something is going to be potent, then there's also a toxicity level. Every single thing that you eat that's coming from a pharmaceutical or a supplement or a medication has all been tested for its toxicity level. So there is something a little off here, just in terms of the sniff test of no toxicity known, but these like kind of magical wonder drug, results. The other thing about rapid clearance is GLPs kind of started in this role. I don't know if you guys know the story, the origin story of GLPs. Do y'all know what animal it comes from? Okay. You don't get to answer, no?
It's like a mammal.
A Gila monster. Do y'all know what a Gila monster is? Gila monster. Gila monster. Thank you. They're big, big lizards. It comes from their saliva. What they notice is that now the GLPs that are isolated from that saliva, they have rapid onset and rapid offset. So they notice that when they use them, it does definitely curb appetite, but it doesn't last very long. So the chemists started adding extra proteins and extra branches and fatty acids to make the GLPs last longer. That's why with a GLP, you can inject only once a week. That's been chemically altered from its original state in order for it to last a long time. And then the Reddit bros. So I don't recommend going onto Reddit to talk about supplements because you will get a barrage of anecdotal data that it just does not, it's not scientific, okay guys? You'll get a mix of recommendations of like what kind of dosing to do. Oh, I did this dose. Oh, I did triple that dose. Oh, this dose, that dose, that dose, this dose. Anyways, so I just like pulled this one excerpt because I thought this is, some guy wrote like a step-by-step of his experience with BPC-157. And I just want to, this is what is circulating in the internet, guys. I noticed extreme improvements in my ability and joint flexibility. My shoulders are always beat up from all the overhead work, snatches, cleans, jerks, pull-ups, and whatnot. No serious injuries, just overuse. Now they felt like brand new. The clicks from my rotator cuff went away almost 100%. Same thing happened to my knees and hips. I could squat blank to grass again without the need to do some serious warm-up routine. I mean, they just talk about this like miracle drug, right? Digestion improved. At the bottom, will I use it again? 110%. I mean, they'll talk about it like it is a miracle drug. It just does not, yeah. So this is where it got truly circulated. Limitations. So I just want to be very, very honest about, so I read probably 35 publications from SICRIC, okay? They are so badly written. They are so badly written. They do not pass like the threshold to be published in American journals, okay? They're not forthcoming about what happened, the methodology. It's almost like just a word vomit of observations without any justification. So when you read these, it's like a statement, kind of like when I just told you it does this. That's what the article will look like. We saw tendon healing. We saw ligament healing. We saw muscle repair. It's like really concerning. The other thing that's really important is, remember, this compound was discovered in 1993. It was discovered in 1993, and it was actually picked up by a pharma company. And what they actually have printed, it's like very public information. This chemist, Sikrik, all of these publications come out of one lab, his lab. And his lab was contracted by a big pharmaceutical company called Plivia. And that alone should raise some flags, right? Because if a pharma company is contracting this particular scientist to do research on this chemical, and they never advanced it into human studies, that is a big red flag. Like, why did it never make it to humans, right? Because their objective is to make the medication, right? So the fact that there's no human studies despite almost 30 years of time and availability to study this compound is really concerning. He's still publishing. I think he just published something like 2 weeks ago, straight up. I just read it earlier today. So this guy is very, very much sold on the compound, but I'm telling you, the science is extremely weak. It's on the WADA list, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency. And so this is the agency that creates the list of banned substances for athletes and military members. And I think it's on the list of banned substances, not because they think it's toxic. It's because they don't know at what point it becomes toxic, because there isn't safety data, because it hasn't been studied in humans. And so because of that lack of human study, that's the reason why it's on the list of banned substances. It had been previously available, and then the FDA moved it into a Category 2 designation, which means that compounding pharmacies cannot make it. However, since RFK is in his position, and he's been very pro-peptide, there's been a movement to reevaluate it along with other peptides. And I want to be very clear, I'm not anti-peptide. I'm just pro-science, that's all. So I actually think that there is enough interest in having that compound. I just think it has not been researched appropriately. And so for people to put their full-scale hope into that medication or that supplement, it's premature. So anyhow, with RFK, the plan is to re-review this medication, BPC-157, in late July, so coming up very soon. They're going to be evaluating whether or not to move it to a a Category 1 designation. And what happens if it's a Category 1 designation, it means it can be purchased from a compounding pharmacy. The reason why that's really important is because at this point, with it having a Category 2 status, it is primarily being purchased through the gray market. I don't know if you want to call it the black market, but basically people are buying it from companies that are telling you it's for research purposes only. And it'll say not for human use. I don't know if you can see over here, but I think that says for research purposes only. So all these vials will have for research purposes only, not for human use, okay? That label where it says not for human use is kind of like the get out of jail card. So if somebody has some type of negative reaction, they're like, oh, you weren't supposed to be using this, bro. This is for research purposes. But that's where people are purchasing them. And these compounds are being made, thank you very much. These compounds are being made in, with the key ingredient sourced from China. All the peptides right now in the US that are in the US market are originally sourced in China, and then they are finished in the United States through compounding pharmacies. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, it does mean that you want to know what's happening once it arrives here, okay? In the last several years, there have been a movement to study these medications that are coming from the gray market, or if you want, the black market, essentially. And so in some evaluations, this was an analysis of semaglutide that's bought by online sellers. Now, these are the people who, when you're on Instagram or you're on TikTok, they're like, do you want a peptide? comment and I'll connect you with my peptide person, right? So there are affiliates that are selling peptides, and those individuals, that this is what they're providing you, right? So that's the gray market. Now, in this analysis of semaglutide sold by online sellers without a prescription, what they found out was that the measured purity of the semaglutide was 7 to 14% versus the label, which says 99%. So this is, what they're seeing is a vast, significantly less product than what you think you're getting, even if it's labeled in that way. The other thing that they were finding was, and this is really concerning, endotoxin detected in 100% of the samples that were tested. Endotoxin comes from E. coli. E. coli, guys. Thanks. Endotoxin from E. coli detected in 100% of samples tested, ranging from 2 to 8 units per milligram. And so what's crazy is if you go to Reddit and you start reading through the bro posts, a lot of people will talk about, yeah, the first 2 weeks I felt really sick, I felt like I had a fever, but I think that was it just working. It was just like getting ready to work, and I think it's really potent and that's why I'm fevering. And this is why they're fevering. They're fevering because it's not sterile. The other thing, this study, and there's several third-party analyses because this is such an important market and we're seeing people that are taking this ubiquitously. So in 2022, Patowski evaluated anabolic steroids on the black market, and they evaluated 5,400 samples, over 5,000 samples. In those 5,000 samples, they found that 36% were completely counterfeit. It had no anabolic steroid in it whatsoever. 37% of them were substandard with the wrong concentration. Amongst those, 2/3 were under-concentrated, some as little as 0.5 to only 1%. And then the remaining 33% were over-concentrated, some as high as doubled concentration. And then 50 to 80% of these performance-enhancing drugs were acquired from the internet. So even though this is about anabolic steroids and this is about semaglutide, I think what it tells you is about the pipeline of peptides from people who are selling them online for research purposes only. The reason why I'm really trying to hit this home is when you purchase things like this from a quote-unquote trusted source, and what you'll read up and down Reddit is, you gotta get it from a trusted source, man. Oh, you gotta know who to go, you gotta know who to go to, you gotta make sure that it's like third-party tested and that it's labeled really well. These published data are showing you that even if you think you're getting 99% purity, it's third-party tested, chances are it's not sterile and it's not the right concentration. And I didn't include it here. There are other publications that have demonstrated that the majority of them also have lead and arsenic inside of them as well. So you may not be getting what you want, and even if you are getting what you want, it may be compounded with another mix of things, okay? And so the reason why I'm bringing this all up is to say BPC-157 may be great, but you probably should be getting it from a compounding pharmacy instead of this source, right? So in the great state of Texas, now not all states allow you to purchase these peptides from a compounding pharmacy, but in Texas you can. I would say the pro of that is that you can know that it's sterile. It's not going to be coming with E. coli. It's not going to be coming with endotoxin. They are going to confirm its compounding fidelity. So you are going to know the thing that you tried to buy is actually that thing. So compounding pharmacy is probably the best way to go if you are curious about BPC-157. You want to go to a pharmacy that has either 503A or 503B status. You can call the pharmacy and ask them for their status. This means that they're regulated either by the state pharmaceutical board or the FDA itself. And that pharmacy can confirm the character and the sterility of the product. So why hasn't it been studied by Big Pharma so far? It's really difficult. This is what you'll hear. You'll hear that it's difficult to get back all the money that it takes to conduct the trials, especially when there's such a huge gray market that's already happening and people are buying it, under the counter everywhere already. So I don't know if I buy that, because if the quality of the product is superior, I think people will, and if it's safer, I do think people would do that. But this is what you'll hear. The other thing to keep in mind is with peptides, because these are synthetically developed, essentially, competitors, it's very difficult to maintain a patent on the compound, because all your competitor has to do is tack on another amino acid or make some simple swap, and you will end up with a similar action, and it can be available cheaper without having to pay the patent, right? So essentially, and this is just a quick little rundown of what it takes to get through the FDA process. You have to go through phase 1 studies that are just evaluating safety, then they're looking at efficacy, and then multi-center trials, and then they move on and on, regulatory submissions as well. So coming back to the publications, there are about 200 publications on BPC. They are all completed by Sicrick's lab, okay? Red flag number 1. We talked about this already, so I'm not gonna rehash that. So this is the one human trial that comes on the radar. It's 2002. They talked about evaluating BPC for the treatment of ulcerative colitis, and they said that it was supplied through enemas in the rectum of men. But in the abstract, and this is it, this is the abstract, by the way, this is the whole thing that's quote unquote published. I found after digging, it's not even in a paper, it's not even in a reviewed paper, it's an abstract for a conference, which does not really involve a high degree of peer review. They don't even mention how many people are involved. See, it says, based on these data, a double-blinded, placebo-controlled study was started to evaluate the tolerability and efficacy. Great. And then there's no follow-up. So when people tell you, oh yeah, they've studied it in humans, like if you just pull it up and read it, you can see how shoddy it is. It's not very good. I saw another publication where they asked Anna Mapp, she's a PhD out of the University of Michigan. She's also the president of the American Peptide Society, to review the historical documents related to BPC-157. And she noted that she reviewed the peptides patent. There was almost no demonstration that I can tell that it was a single pure isolated substance. There was no reference to the molecular weight and no published sequence of the peptide in the patent, okay? Which would be considered unacceptable under today's scientific practice and renders all work unverifiable, unable to reproduce findings. And she questions whether BPC-15 is naturally occurring at all, or if it's completely synthetic. It does not mean that it could not have a role, right? It does not mean that it could not have a therapeutic role. It just means that its origin story is a little sus. And again, I'm very much in favor of evaluating it because it is used tremendously in the gym sphere. What we do know about it is that through observational studies, we do see, and these are from Petri dishes, that if you add BPC to cells, they begin to grow fibroblasts and they start to grow blood vessels. We talked about that having a potentially good role in healing. The theory here is that it might actually be quite damaging and increase the risk of metastasis for cancer cells that are already existing. So if you have a pre-existing cancer that you don't know about and you're using BPC-157, the theory is that that could accelerate that cancer's growth. It has not been tested because we have not done safety testing, right? But that's one of the concerns. So all in all, I would say we have a ton of anecdata from the bros. And I'm not discrediting that. I'm just saying that we can't, at this point, we cannot say that it's not placebo, right? Because we haven't tested it against placebo. Yeah, and I'm just curious as to why somebody who was contracted by a pharmaceutical company never made it into human trials. That's just super weird to me. Just to rehash the pros, not proven, and the risks. I think the most concerning thing is getting manufacturing contamination and the potential of tumor progression. But I do hope it gets studied because I think we have a lot of people with a lot of injuries. We have a lot of people with back pain. We have a lot of people with knee injuries. If this is a compound that is healing, that would be wonderful to prove that and to provide it safely. I'm gonna pause there. Yeah.
You kept talking about the gray market. I guess my question is there not like laws and regulations against like false advertising of people online talking about like a peptide seller?
Yeah, so I think because of the way that they communicate. Oh yeah, so the question was, are there not laws and regulations that prevent people from online selling, essentially, right? There are definitely laws and regulations around that. I think the way that they get out of that is that label that says for research purposes only, not for human consumption. And so if somebody chooses to do that absolves the liability. And the other thing is, I think online when people are advertising, they're basically saying, hey, if you're interested, like just message me. But there's not necessarily like a strong chain of connection. And a lot of those research labs also for the longest time had really like weird, shady payment systems where people were just like Venmoing different people that didn't necessarily have a strong connector, right? Because they don't want to leave a paper trail per se. But yeah, that label is the get out of jail card. Yeah.
What about the influencers? Because like all over TikTok, I see those influencers that are like, oh, I'm on Greta, I'm on the GHK-Cu.
Yeah.
Like if you guys are interested, like DM me, I can send you my supplier. So like the supplier himself, he can add label like, hey, it's for research. But that influencer that promotes it for human use, wouldn't they be liable in a way because they are straightforward about it?
So I think because that influencer, the ultimate product, all they're doing is making a connection. They're not necessarily the manufacturer or right? So they can just say, I'm walking away. I just put this person in contact with this person, right? And that label, again, is just, it absolves even the supplier because they're saying, oh, like, it's on the product. It says it's not for human consumption. So I don't know what kind of research they think everybody's doing with it, but yeah, and that's what it is. And the thing that's really hard is that because of the algorithm, and I won't say that it's not like a lot of people are using them. I mean, and we see it kind of like around us everywhere. Like you can see people like withering away into like tiny little things. And so I know people are using it. And so it feels very, very tempting because you're like, well, it must be fine. Like everybody's using it. Like my sister works in a very, very high-end gym and a physical therapy clinic. It's like a performance center, and she knows like 30 people that are using BPC-157. And so it becomes very normalized, right? And so people feel like they have trusted sources and whatnot, but the fact is that unless you have somebody that's like testing and confirming sterility and confirming that you're not also getting other mixed in products. For example, one of the things that I was talking to a friend about, they're really emphasizing their strength training, right? And the fact is they can't be sure that the only thing they're getting in that vial is BPC. What they may also be getting is growth hormone, which definitely works. Or they may also be getting androgenic steroids, which definitely work. So you may be getting a cocktail of things that seem to work, and you may think it's one ingredient, but it's actually like a cocktail of things, right? So that is where this gray market gets very problematic.
Even from a compounding pharmacy?
Not from a compounding pharmacy, yeah. So from a compounding pharmacy, you can be sure of what you're getting.
Because when the compounding pharmacies add their own amino acids too to GLP-1s.
So what they normally compound it with is like B12. Yeah, a lot of B12, and that is fine. There's nothing really like high impact from the B12. They'll say it's like for anti-nausea purposes, but at least you know what is going to be in there. Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering, how confident are you in like the insightfulness that like peptide discovery that like RFK is like trying to lead like could be? Like what exactly do you feel like they would be able to study, and would you feel confident in what they're finding?
So the question is, how confident would I feel in the studies that are kind of potentially imminent related to RFK's push to make peptides more available? So we won't know until we see the studies. So there's a lot of good science that's done, and there's a lot of bad science that's done. You can't tell until you complete the studies and then you read up what was the method? Like, how did they do it? Was it rigorous? Can somebody look at your numbers and then make the calculations, and can I get the same conclusion, right? Because there are people who massage numbers and don't do the right stats. So I don't know. I guess I'm waiting. I hope it turns out to be a great compound. I think that would be wonderful, like I said. But I'm also kind of a stickler for good science. So I don't know. Yeah.
Since you said that it's very dangerous and there's like it's mixed with lead and
Arsenic.
arsenic. So how long would it be before it is available at the compounding pharmacy where it's safer? And what are the benefits generally of using it?
Yeah, so I'm kind of expecting them to authorize the use of BPC-157 in July. They're gonna have their meetings I think it's scheduled for like July 24th or something like that. It's like late July. So we'll see come August what comes from that. If that happens, then it's totally fine. Actually, right now in Texas, you can go to a pharmacy and get BPC-157. So, sorry, you will be able to. You will be able to if it's moved onto the Category 1 list. Right now, it's in limbo. It's been removed from the Category 2 list, but it's not yet been put onto the Category 1 list. So it's waiting. So I expect it to move to the Category 1 list. And then if you're able to get those compounds, you'll be able to benefit mostly from the healing aspect, like ligament heals, injury healing, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think before Dr. Sada moves into the second peptide, I want to ground us a little bit in the, let's zoom out a little bit and kind of study a little bit of the culture that we're kind of witnessing happening. In the last literally 1.5 to 2 years, we have seen a massive boom and attention being given to this movement towards longevity, right? And it's an interesting trend because I think, cosmetics and fashion are always going to be things that sway, and we see this trending and that trending and that trending and this kind of body type and that type of, I'm not even talking about that anymore. I'm talking about longer life, living a healthier life, this obsession with being able to, like she was saying, like you're 100 years old but you feel 65. And so that preservation of self has been at the heart of so much attention lately. And while longevity in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. We of course are going to be thinking about that. Human nature is such that it thinks about how can I make sure I preserve myself. It's only human to want to do so. I think that something really important to bring into this question is when it comes to our Islam, when it comes to our faith, we give our focus a lot to barakah. And barakah means blessings in the time that you have. And I want us to just make sure we factor that in when we consider the decisions that we make when we're talking about these kinds of peptides and semaglutides and all of these things that kind of are intended for our betterment, right? So that I feel better, I look better, I feel more confident in all of my ability, right? I want us to make sure we're asking, what is it for, right? What is the point of me wanting and seeking this longevity? We all, as human beings, think about our legacy. We all think about what we are doing with this time on earth and what we are going to be able to do in the time that we have, and if we're going to leave this world and we did everything we needed to do and we left everything on the table and we were able to fulfill all of those things.
we can really get lost, and it can be a very slippery slope when we start to get obsessed with an idea of, yes, I am now so much more powerful, I am so much more, everything is more potent, I am able to do all of these things and nothing is holding me back. You can very easily fall into this, like, almost like an arrogance that kind of takes over with, what can I do with all of this ability that I have? And then we forget what was it all for, you know? So I want us to make sure we think about that, because we have so many cases of beautiful role models, all the way from the companions even to present day, that only lived like a short lifespan. Imam Shafi'i barely made it to 50 years old. We say his name to this day as a you know, a figurehead for Islamic jurisprudence. Even if I use the examples of today, Muhammad al-Sharif, founder of one of the founders of Al-Maghrib Institute, he passed away when he was barely 40. He didn't even have any prior illnesses, subhanAllah. He passed away in his sleep. And so these people, we know them as legacy builders, right? That literally was part of his campaign, subhanAllah. Like, he was talking about, that's the name of one of the things that he has as a project. And I was like, wow. These are names we're going to remember for forever. And so it is really about what we're doing with the time that we have. And we pray for that, because one of the beautiful du'as that we say is, Ya Allah, make the ending of my life, the khawatim, make the ending the best part of my life, right? Don't allow it to be the worst. Don't allow me to leave this world and I'm in the worst of my state. And so I want us to imagine that, because we are making these aims towards longevity, and they may actually be happening right before our very eyes. All of that may actually be happening. The science is gonna, you know, go in this direction and start backing all of this. But what is it all for? And it is very scary to think that we get that time and that extra longevity, but it isn't used in a good way, and it actually becomes our downfall. And so I think that it's very, very grounding to make sure we have our faith in mind, and we have barakah in mind with what we do with the time we have been blessed with, that it is not all for vanity. Okay, so.
Thank you for that reminder. We have a couple of questions from our live streaming audience, so I'm just going to quickly address one of them. Is the data on GLPs more robust than peptides? So just as a refresher, GLPs are a type of peptide, and so there is tremendous data on GLPs. GLPs are very well studied, very well documented. In fact, we're finding tremendous more reasons to use them besides diabetes. We're seeing its role in heart failure. We're seeing its role in fatty liver disease. We're seeing that there are some anti-inflammatory effects from GLPs as well. And so it's not to say that they do not have their risks. They absolutely have their risks. I've seen patients with negative side effects from GLPs. Not everybody tolerates them. So it's a discussion that you gotta have with your particular provider, and you definitely need to have a doctor on board if you're gonna be doing GLPs, because if you do have any of the negative side effects, they can be a little bit serious, and so you do need to have a conversation with a physician before starting a GLP, right? Okay. So we're gonna move on to GHK-Cu. It is the blue compound. It's blue because of the copper that is in it. And so it is a 3 amino acid peptide, glycine, histidine, lysine. That's why it's GHK, which is the abbreviation for lysine, which doesn't make any sense. And this 3 amino acid peptide binds to copper. It has a very strong affinity to copper. It was discovered in 1973, studying the plasma of the youths. And in the 70s and 80s, the father of GHK-Cu, Dr. Lauren Pickart, he discovered it, and its role specifically in accelerating the liver and wound repair. So it was found to be very helpful in repairing skin wounds. Copper peptides entered the skincare market by the late 1980s. And so this is, again, I'm bringing this up again because we think of peptides as kind of like this new fringe thing, and it's like they've actually been around for a long time. Research through the 80s showed that GHK-Cu naturally occurs in human saliva, plasma, and urine, and it declines in concentration as we age. Again, these are some of the key features of the anti-aging movement. So the mechanism of action of GHK-Cu, it upregulates collagen synthesis. So you'll see this is considered like the skin peptide that a lot of influencers will use. And it suppresses inflammation messengers, specifically TGF, beta, and IL-6. So for any sciencey people, IL-6 is a big one. It reduces tissue breakdown. And one of the most interesting things I think about GHK-Cu is its role in stem cell gene amplification. So what it tends to do is it turns on genes that influence stem cells. And so as you and I know, stem cells are regenerative. They are used often when we want things to heal quickly. They also offer collagen production. And so it modulates 103 stem cell associated genes, upregulating 57 of them by 50% and downregulating certain ones by 50%. It increases stem cell self-renewal, and it offers tumor suppression support. So what's interesting about this, as compared to BPC-157, is it seems like GHK-Cu is actually cancer protective in many ways. We see that it shuts down the multi-drug resistant gene by over 1,000%. Sonic hedgehog is a real protein. It's a gene that helps determine stem cell designation. Anyways, the sonic hedgehog protein or gene is often overactive in cancer cells, and it downregulates it by over 200%. It also is a marker of undifferentiated embryonic stem cells, so it reduces undifferentiated cells. So these are all like cancer repressing mechanisms. GHK, when it does not have copper, promotes stem cell proliferation, increasing your stem cells and their renewal. If it has copper bound to it, then it drives the stem cell differentiation. So meaning the stem cell can determine what it wants to do. Is it going to become collagen? Is it going to become tissue? Is it going to become blood vessels? Is it going to become fat cells? So that differentiation. It massively upregulates tumor suppression genes, and I just added these just to be appropriate, but I'm not going to read these. So for anybody who's sciencey and wants the proof, that's them. And it reverses 70% of metastasis-prone gene signatures for colon cancer cells. Very, very interesting cancer implications with GHK-Cu. The caveat, GHK-Cu does increase blood vessel growth through that same VEGF compound, similar to BPC. So it does still have this theoretical potential if you did have cancer somewhere. Could this increased blood vessel growth increase the risk of metastasis or speed it up? However, with so many cancer preventing aspects on the genome, I think that's generally globally GHK-Cu is considered cancer preventing. One study demonstrated that it increased TNF-alpha in breast cancer cells. So these are also potential concerns related to its role if somebody already has breast cancer. So it's not that it's going to cause cancer, it's that if those cancer cells are already present, they might be turned on or exacerbated, right? Which is why prevention is so important. Get your mammograms. And also, you should talk with your doctor to see if you should be genetically tested for any of the cancer genes. That's really important as well. TNF-alpha is very interesting though. If it is in high amounts, it can kill cancer cells. When TNF-alpha is in low concentration, it promotes vascular growth and could increase the risk for metastasis. So that's one of the interesting things about TNF-alpha. So where do I sign up? I only put JLo on here because like she's 56. I don't know what's happening. She's on the GHK-Cu. So The FDA status with GHK-Cu, it is approved for topical formulation, so you can easily get GHK-Cu, and it's very, very well documented in topical format. A lot of dermatologists will use GHK-Cu before and after cosmetic procedures or reparative procedures, any type of surgery, so GHK-Cu topically is a really good option. Injections, we're back to category 2. So we do definitely think that GHK-Cu is likely to be moved on to category 1 with the late July evaluation. But yeah, it'll probably be available by compounding pharmacies come this summer or later this summer. I just wanted to offer some important aspects when it comes to the topical products. They are very easy to degrade. So the copper is very easily oxidated. If a product is unopened, it will only last 12 months from its manufacturing date. So you really need to be careful of the manufacturing date on the product. If it's already opened, it will only last 3 to 6 months. If it is reconstituted for injection, let's say this does become available through category 1 compounding pharmacies and you're injecting it, it will only last 21 to 30 days in the refrigerator once it's opened because of the copper oxidation. It is extremely photosensitive, so you do not want it having access to sunlight. It is very temperature sensitive. You do not want it, like bathrooms are terrible, so they're too hot. So it needs to be in a cool, dry place, so it needs to be in a cupboard somewhere or the refrigerator. If you are gonna get topical GHK-Cu, a pump is the best way because it reduces the exposure to oxygen the most. And you also do not want to layer it with your vitamin C or AHAs. These are acidic products and they destabilize the copper. So you want to be applying your GHK-Cu at night and your vitamin C serums in the morning to separate the use of those products. Otherwise, you wasted your money. The highest credibility companies when it comes to GHK-Cu are Skin Biology, as well as osmotics, and elastin tends to be the company that is used most often by dermatologists. Specifically the regenerating skin nectar, this is the product that is most commonly used by cosmetic dermatologists for the GHK-Cu compound in it. All right, I mean GHK-Cu is very straightforward, so it's, yeah, it's a much happier story. Any questions on GHK-Cu? Yeah.
You mentioned if you want to use the topical to use it at night, but what if you're using retinoid?
Yeah, so you do not want to be using them at the same time. I mean, retinoid is a vitamin A product, but I would say if you are separating the absorbency time, you're probably okay. Just I would not layer. Yeah, so I would probably separate them by at least an hour. Yeah.
Are most people taking it topically? Is that what you're saying?
No. The question was, are most people using it topically? I think a lot of people are using it in a cocktail that is for research purposes only. But I will say, you can actually see very good befores and afters even with topical GHK-Cu. So don't be discouraged. Yeah. Yeah.
Do they only work while you're taking them? Like if you stop taking them?
Yeah. Yeah, the question was, do they stop working if you stop using them? Eventually, yeah, that kind of, that tissue breakdown does kind of catch up with you, eventually. Yeah.
If you stop it, does it like accelerate the process of like the tissue breakdown?
The question was, if you stop the use of the GHK-Cu, whenever you do stop, do you it's like being on a mountain. So I like to bring this up because like the minoxidil thing, so with hair loss, if you use minoxidil every day, you're gonna regrow hair, right? But let's say genetically you're on like this trajectory to like lose hair, right? And you start using minoxidil here, right? And so here, hold that. So you're like this, right? You're like this.
Oh, you hold this.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so your hair trajectory is here. You're like, oh man, I'm losing hair, right? And so you start why? But that's what this is for. I need both hands. I need both hands. Yeah. Okay, no, just talk to me. No, just mic me. Just hold me like that. Oh, okay. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so you start losing hair, right? And like here, it's like, oh my God, I'm losing hair. I need to get married. Okay, so then they start using minoxidil, and the hair comes back here, right? And then you're still using minoxidil, great. And then someday you're like, you know what? I feel pretty confident. I'm gonna stop using it. Boom. You come back here. So I think a lot of people think that after stopping minoxidil, that it like punished them, when in reality, you actually just end up where you genetically would have ended up in the first place. So that's the thing with hair and minoxidil. Now with this, I think it's actually very different. So we're gonna go this way now. So you're here, right? And you start using the GHK-Cu and you're like, oh wow, my collagen is so nice. And you're up here and then you stop using it for whatever reason. You're like, you know what, I'm gonna embrace my age. And so then you actually start here and you start to degrade from here, right? Because you've built up all that nice collagen. So you're not gonna like slump all the way back down. Nice. Good question. Thanks for figuring that out with me. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can you compare what use of topical GHK would look like versus using retinol?
Oh, great question. So retin A has its first and most obvious role is in thinning the surface layers of your epidermis, right? That's why you get that peeling at the beginning, and that's also why you kind of get that glow, because you lose some of that dull extra layers of skin on top. That also tends to, there's some role in boosting the collagen that can kind of help with wrinkles, and also that like sloughing of the top skin also allows you to lose some wrinkles. But it is not as impressive as the GHK-Cu when it comes to the collagen development. It's much, now people are gonna tell you to do both probably, but the collagen level is very, very different. I will say you look very young, mashallah. Are you in your 20s?
Yeah.
So you probably have quite a bit of collagen. So I want to, actually, this is a really important point, because there are a lot of people who are consuming this content and it feels like, oh, well, I need to be optimizing, you know, so like this is a way to optimize. But the fact of the matter is you actually haven't aged enough to need this yet. Okay, so, and I'm not saying that because I'm your auntie, but I am saying that because that's the reality of your tissue. Like your tissue in your 20s is outstanding. So is your BPC-157. Like your protective factors, your ability to heal in your 20s is outstanding. You're not at a place where these compounds are really necessary per se. You definitely are not having any resting wrinkles yet. So I would say for somebody in their 20s, the retin A is the right product. The vitamin C is the right product. I would say the GHK-Cu, there's probably some optimization. You're not gonna see the before and afters that a 40-year-old is gonna have, or even a 35-year-old. You may see like diminishing returns. Where you're probably gonna get your best bang for your buck is gonna be vitamin C and retin A and SPF. Yeah.
What's the right age to start these?
I would say some of it is genetic. So some people have like the ability, like they have great collagen, and like I know some women, especially women of color, who have beautiful skin and it stays tight like their whole life, and they don't really struggle with wrinkles or volume loss or any of that. So some of it is genetic. So for some people, it's gonna come earlier than others, depending on their genetics. So I think it's like when it starts to bother you, right? But I think it's safe to say, if you're in your 20s, this stuff is probably not, it's a little too early for that, for both of these.
Even 29?
I think that's up to the beholder, the eye of the beholder. Good question. All right. Anything else? All right, it's just about Maghrib. If you guys have any other questions, or if there are any peptides that you want me to review next, please let me know. Is there one more question over there? No? Okay.
Did anything come up for you in the discussion, like from an Islamic or like
You know, because like fiqh doesn't really enter this equation, because honestly, like ingredient wise, this is very much so like things that are coming from the body and even the things we're adding to it. So if that does come to the question, it's not really about halal haram for me. It really more is like the spiritual ramifications. I think that is the most alarming thing for me, was like, where are we going with the fountain of youth? You know, because it's been promised till as old as time. But we always find that there's another side to that coin, which is like, oh, now that I've found the fountain of youth, I don't want to leave here. And we already live in a culture that scares us from the idea of decaying and dying and leaving this world, but ultimately that is where we're going. And so it's like, how do we find this balance between not getting so attached to here, where it's that much more devastating to let go, and to then focus the right amount of attention to akhirah, you know, because it can be a very big distraction. So I think it's more the spiritual ramifications and how shaitan can really trick us with, oh, you're good now, you have everything that you need, and then the forgetfulness that might come with that mindset. So may Allah give us beautiful skin in Jannah.
I just wanted to...
and in this dunya
and even better in eternity.
Those are my references.
Yeah.
I just want y'all to know that I did read all those papers, if not more. And then these are just quick announcements for June. We are going to have Soul here in this room. It'll be the first time doing Soul here. So we look forward to seeing all of our Empower Soul ladies here on June 18th. And then also our annual pool party will be July 18th. Details will be dropping on the website, on the Instagram, on the Telegram. Okay, Assalamu alaikum.